Day 4 of the Giro d'Italia, and Lotto's Rik Verbrugghe is the only man yet to wear the pink jersey. The race itself, though, is still a battle for seconds, with 10 riders within 30. Today, La Maglia Rosa should be challenged as the race travels up some short but tough climbs on its way to the finish in Potenza. Look for Danilo Hondo to try to steal away the pink with only a 9-second deficit to Verbrugghe. Attacking riders like De Luca and Simoni should make noise as well, though their deficits are more significant. Stage 3 of the 2001 Giro d'Italia is up next. Hello and welcome again. This intriguing battle goes on. We're now on day 4 of 22 of this year's Giro d'Italia. I'm Phil Liggett, joined by Paul Sherwin and 3-times rider Bob Roll in the Giro d'Italia. Well, yesterday we saw the riders finish almost all together. The judges, however, altered the time slightly, so we remind ourselves first of all at the overall situation, and still in the pink, the Belgian rider Rik Verbrugghe. But not 4 seconds, in fact, back to his original 9-second deficit to Danilo Hondo, Jan Ruska, Abraham Olano and Gabriele Colombo, who's also the leader of this race at the moment, on points. Further down the list, we've got Vladimir Duma. He's at a second place when he finished behind Rastelli on stage 1. They're 13 seconds off the pace. There's the top 10. Let's have a look at the big names. Slight improvement up to 12th for Gilberto Simoni, but the time difference still the same. Pantani is 15th, and the last year's champion Stefano Garzelli is 30th. With Jan Ullrich, an awful lot to do for Jan at the moment. He's 2 minutes and 34 seconds down. Well, when we left you yesterday, in fact, we were showing you a time deficit of 4 seconds back to Danilo Hondo, because we had assumed, as did our television broadcasters in Italy, that the referees had split-timed the arrival of the big field, and there was a definite gap. Bob, what's the rule on this? Well, the official's discretion is a bit like a woman's prerogative. It's subject to inexplicable changes at any time. But generally, they try to establish a 1-second gap in between groups, and now that's the last rider from one group to the first rider of the next group, and that looks to me like a clear gap. Yes, that's a clear gap. That should be in a separate timer. I don't know if you remember, Bob, a few years ago in the Tour de France, it affected an Italian rider, Ivan Gotti. He lost his lead to Bjarne Riis because they split-timed exactly that bunch sprint like that. Yes, absolutely. The officials can do that when there's gaps like that. This time, it's favoring Verbrugghe, our pink jersey rider, because they decided not to put that gap into the overall time, in which case Danilo Hondo did not gain back those 5 seconds that they had given him. In this case, he won't have to work as hard to defend the pink jersey, because at the Inter-Giro sprint, Hondo would not be able to get the bonification 6 seconds, and he'd have to get two along the route at the finish and at the Inter-Giro. So it's a good break for Rik Verbrugghe in this case. Right, well, Paul, at least it shows the judges aren't biased towards the Italians, because Verbrugge's a Belgian, leader since day 1. How long do you think he can hang on?
Well, that will be a good bonus for him yesterday, keeping that those extra few seconds. But the thing about Rik Verbrugghe, Phil, his team is riding very hard indeed. Every day we're seeing them in a big long line on the front of the main field. That's not a team that has long-term plans to keep the pink jersey. They're riding at the moment as a team who really want to keep the pink jersey for just as long as possible. I think really it's going to be a battle of the big names that we saw last year. Garzelli, I'm sure, will come back to the fore. Marco Pantani, I think, would like to rattle the cage of his old teammate. And of course, Gilberto Simoni is very aggressive, and the big mountains are all at the end of this Giro d'Italia. And one foreign name to throw in there, Abraham Olano, who to me is looking pretty good.
So lots of names, plenty to conjure with. The race goes on. We're going to bring you live action, of course, today now of stage 4. This is the route they face. It is a ride of 149 kilometres. We're in the centre of the southern Italy roads here. As we've done the bit around Pescara, we're now leaving Lucera this morning and heading to Potenza, where we visited there on 15 previous occasions. The first time in the race being won by Alfredo Binda, who's won 40 stages of this great event. Well, when we come back after the break, we're going to be in the midst of the action. The riders already some 1.5 hours on the way to the finishing line in Potenza. See you when you come back. Enjoy the action. Now, moments ago, this happened. The race leader on the floor, Rik Verbrugghe of Belgium in the pink jersey, takes a bike, looks a little bit hurt. Also down was his teammate Glenn de Hollander. And a little bit of chaos here at around the 60 kilometres to go point. Well, Bob, that's exactly what we didn't want to see as we come live, isn't it?
It's a 3-week race and just about anything can happen, and he's been very attentive. He's ridden the perfect race so far. Even considering that, he still comes off, hits the ground hard. He was bent over there, stretching out. Usually when you get the wind knocked out of you, that's the reaction that you have, but he looks like he's back up on his bike. Nothing that seems to be broken physically, so hopefully he can get back into the race as soon as possible. A lot of his teammates came back to help him.
This is Fabio Baldato at the back of the rear group. But Bob, going through many of these Italian towns as we look now at these live pictures, Immagini in Directa, live from the roads of Italy, you can see there in the pink jersey riding in 3rd or 4th position, the whole of the team now starting to come back. These Italian towns can be very, very dangerous, can't they, with all those directional islands, barriers, cars sometimes getting parked in the road. Right now, there's a bit of panic amongst the Lotto boys.
It looks like they're really racing hard to get back to the front. There's probably some attacks being launched. We're pretty close to the finish, and at that point, a lot of the racers, especially on a hilly course like we have today, starting to launch their attacks for the finale. There's the peloton. They're not that far behind. Seems like they're in a good group, but look at this breakaway here.
That's pretty important. There's a breakaway going off at the front at the same time as the pink jersey is trying to get himself back into the main field. I made that around about 20 seconds. Now, very often, if there is a crash in a race like this, there's somewhat of a truce, especially if one of the big names goes down. But if the race is on and the hammer is down, nobody slows up.
Nobody slows up, and that's when you need your teammates to come back en masse, pace you up to the front. That's what the Lotto team has done. They've been very good at taking care of Rik Verbrugghe. That's pretty bad luck. Like you said, when you go into these small southern Italian towns, you have to be ready for anything. There's islands in the middle of the road. They don't remove the cars as often. People pull out on the course. It's absolute pandemonium. It's very nerve-wracking. That's why defending the leader jersey in these big tours is so difficult.
Well, that crash was at 60 kilometres to go. As you can see, 4 or 5 of the Lotto team realised their team man was down. They've waited for him. They're pacing him back. I just noticed there Hans de Klerk up in the front group is now looking anxiously over his shoulder to see if there's any progress in the chase. His job at this moment will be to stay up there but not drop back. But if he sees his team captain coming up, he will fall back and add more power to the chase. This is a very workmanlike group now because the race is split into 3 packs. And, well, literally that crash happened the first minute of our coverage coming in from Italy. Now, as you can see here, we still have problems with the satellite link-up, and it's general throughout the world, by the way. The problem is in Italy, and thank heavens they managed to get those pictures to us. There's the gap, Paul, 22 seconds, and the pressure now on the Maglia Rosa.
Absolutely. This is the leading group who are trying to get themselves into a breakaway situation right now. There's a small main field behind, and then 22 seconds to the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey, who is scrambling with all of his teammates, and they will be going full bore right now. The main field, as you can see, those yellow jerseys are being controlled by the team of Marco Pantani. Il Pirata in about 10th or 15th place there, but his team have gone to the front because they want to nail back that group. In a situation like this, Phil, they don't want too big a group to get off the front. 4 or 5 riders is not too dangerous, but that small group going off the front right now is around about 15 riders strong, and they're through the pictures, the satellite link, the microwave link from the motorbikes to the helicopter there, showing us that the race leader is slowly but surely clawing his way back into the main field.
But just look at the speed over the ground here as we try to hold these pictures steady to see what is probably the most dramatic situation in the Giro since we lost Francesco Casagrande at the start of the second day with that broken wrist. That was really sad. Another rider gone out today, by the way, since the stage began. De Los Angeles of the Kelme team has also now retired. The chase is on. I think it's well organised here. Look at that. The Mercatoni Uno riders of Marco Pantani driving the head of the peloton as we pull back now at the 50 kilometres to go point. Swing to the right. We are looking down the road, and there he is, the pink jersey of Verbrugghe. A little flashback for you here to show the crash as other riders from Lotto also went down with him because no doubt they were riding alongside him. We thought for a moment he was hurt. He seems okay. He's chasing well. His team is with him. And I think, after we've taken a short break, I hope to be able to report he is almost back on the tail of that peloton. Well, drama with 50 kilometres left to race on stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia. We'll take a break. And as you come back at the tail of the field, freewheeling on has come in the pink jersey and all of his teammates in red. At one stage, he was timed at 25 seconds. He can breathe a sigh of relief now, Paul.
He certainly can. The team, though, were well drilled. They were prepared for a situation like this. 5 riders dropped back from the main field to pace him back. And at the front, the race was controlled by Marco Pantani's team. And once all of those groups came together, you can see there's been a general slowing down. But for Rik Verbrugghe, that was a very close call.
Looking at the graphic on the right there, the town of Melfi was the scene of the Intergiro before we came to air, and they haven't reported the result of that yet. And then we continue on now towards Potenza. The bunch more or less staying together today, pretty high speed yet again, and then all of a sudden we had the crash. 5 riders went down, 3 of them were the Lotto riders, one the race leader plus 2 teammates, and one of those teammates certainly Glenda Hollander, who was in the breakaway yesterday. Now, it seems as though we've neutralised the race. The boys taking time out, adjusting the problems of the crash, and still riders being forced to stop and put matters to right now after the fall. This looks to me as though it is again Glenda Hollander, yes it is, who is now taking time out to adjust his bike after that shunt. But this is a tough start. You can never have an easy day in the Giro, Bob.
It's always nerve-wracking, and it seemed like the Mercatoni Uno team went to the front at the impetus of their team leader, Marco Pantani, to close the gap to that breakaway. They could have done it flat out and blown the peloton apart, but it seemed like they had an agreement there to go nice and steady and close the gap gradually to give Rik Verbrugghe the honor of still being in the pink jersey, to let him come back at a reasonable pace to the peloton.
Well, the pace has slowed down, Bob, as they've all come back together, so the pressure off at 47 kilometres to go, so that gives us a chance now for me to ask Bob Roll alongside me here to give us his own unique insight into cycling and the action of this year's Giro d'Italia.
During Pantani's stage 1 attack, he was joined by his teammate Ermanno Brignoli. As the breakaway to the finish line was being spearheaded by Olano and Simoni, Pantani was struggling to take his turn at the front, as we saw from the Pirates' grimace. Brignoli was wondering if an all-out effort was necessary at this point in the Giro, so he called out to Marco, "What should I do?" In an instant, Pantani composed his expression and replied, "Put the hammer down." Brignoli was then capable of a huge effort all the way to the finish. Consequently, on stage 2, the Mercatoni Uno team massed around their leader and were 100% dedicated to his protection. A leader must be able to mask his pain and demonstrate strength and power to his soldiers in order that they will make superhuman efforts on his behalf. The flesh is capable as long as the spirit is strong.
Paul Pantani there looked rather determined, didn't he? Almost brought his teammate off in that chase a couple of days back.
He certainly did, but that was a moment of panic as that happened as well, and what they were trying to do was take an opportunity out on the road. And in fact, as we look here at Niccolo Micheli, who's trying to ride off the front, he's currently 20th overall, and he finished 20th overall in the 99 Giro d'Italia. But actually, after that little fracas on the first day, De Luca and Simoni actually made it up. And Simoni saying maybe that was all declared in the heat of the moment. So really, De Luca should think before he opens his mouth. But certainly Marco Pantani was not at all informed of any of that pact that did not, in fact, include him. And he says the race conditions are the same for everybody, so you've just got to get out and take advantage of them.
Well, Micheli on the attack there, he, in fact, has been away more or less since the melee, because I saw him nip off the front, and the rest have reorganised behind, and now there's a messenger coming across here to say we're all back together again, I think. This man should not be underestimated, because he won a stage of the Giro back in 1998, and on his good year, which was 1997, he finished 4th overall. Michele Gobi from the Mobile Vetta team has come up. By the way, the Italians, Bob, complaining in the Italian newspapers, or at least the newspapers are complaining, they're not riding too well just yet.
So far, it hasn't been a great Giro for the Italian riders, and you'd think that with over half of the peloton in 13 teams as well, they would have had a little bit more success. It's been pretty much a foreign show, with the exception of Ellis Rastelli winning that first very rainy and dangerous stage.
And see, after all that chaos, though, Bob, through the very hazy pictures right now, the Lotto team getting themselves organised again at the front of the main pack. After moments of panic like that, it always seems as if the main field does slow down while everybody tries to find out and see if anybody is injured, see if there are any problems with the machines, and get themselves organised back into a racing position. This is the picture at the finish line at the moment, and certainly we're having some serious technical problems, Phil, getting the satellite link up from the motorbikes down here to the finish line. But hopefully, as we get further north up the peninsula, the pictures will get clearer.
Well, we're going to stay with the pictures, of course, as long as we can. Our producer out in Italy is having a real problem, but he is fighting to hold the pictures, and thank heavens he managed to hold them when the pink jersey crashed at kilometre 58. We're now 45 kilometres from the finish. We'll be back with more action very shortly. And looking down now at a Kelme rider here, trying to bridge the gap up to Nicola Micheli and Micheli Gobi. They've got a 21-second gap over the field at just over 25 miles to race to the finish. Now, we feel it may not be a group sprint today, Paul, because, and you know the area better than both of us, Bob, because it gets pretty tough over those hills in the distance before the line, doesn't it?
Yes, it's a very hard finale. There's a lot of climbs. It's a little bit like Liège-Bastogne-Liège, 2 and 3 kilometer climbs, quite steep. The roads, as you can see, are pretty nice, but still, they're very stiff climbs, and I'd be surprised if it came down to a field sprint. Guys like Danilo Di Luca will want to get up there on a stage like today. Perhaps David Rebellin, Giuseppe Di Grandi from Tacconi, whose teammate is now in a breakaway. That's Micheli. And also I want to include the name of Giuliano Figueras, the ex-world champion, who's now riding for Ceramica Panaria, a smaller Italian team. Very, very classy bike racer. And a course like this suits him perfectly, but we'll see how well he's riding in this Giro d'Italia.
The last 15 kilometres are actually very technical indeed. That climb with 15 kilometres to go is around about 4 kilometres long, and then a dangerous technical descent off the top of it as well, down into the outskirts of the finishing town of Potenza. And then coming into Potenza in the last 3 or 4 kilometres, there are 1 or 2 nasty little bends, not quite as sharp as the bends the riders went round yesterday, but certainly it is a long swinging drag into the final 250 metres. And I have to agree with you, Bob, I think it is certainly the kind of terrain for a small breakaway of 5 or 6 riders to get clear on the run-in. And now that the big leaders of the Giro d'Italia are starting to watch each other for the difference in seconds at the moment, it would give the advantage to maybe some of the lesser riders to leap off the front.
I'm sure the Italians are a little bit impatient for a little bit more action from their racers, the home country, so I'll bet you today in the finale the Italian riders are going to be really, really attacking hard.
Looks now as if, in fact, Lotto are quite happily back in the driving seat again as we get a chance here to look at the man who's caught currently in no man's land. He's halfway between the 2 leaders and the riders. In fact, he's just making contact as we speak with the 2 leaders. The 2 leaders are Michele Gobi of Mobilvetta and Nicola Micheli of the Tacconi Sport team. And the Kelme riders once again putting a man into the group. This is Alexis Rodriguez. He's ridden across there. The great thing about Kelme, Bob, isn't it, is they're always on the attack. They're always looking for a breakaway situation. Although they're classified as a team for the mountains, they're always in the moves on the flat.
Once we get to the 3-week stage races, the riders that you've probably not heard much from the whole season, suddenly they're in every single breakaway. If they're not crashing in the back, they have a guy up in the front. They're a very, very exciting team to watch. I've really enjoyed watching the Kelme team over the years. They're so aggressive. You can see he just was trapped there in no man's land, didn't bother him at all. Looked for his chance. Now Rodriguez is in the breakaway. It's beautiful to watch him race.
In Seguitore, that means the chasing group, the group behind, is at 20 seconds at the moment. So that's a fairly nice advantage at the moment. And I don't think any of these riders in the group are at all dangerous to the overall lead of Rik Verbrugghe. So right now, Lotto are not going to put the hammer down. They're going to let these 3 riders start to form a serious breakaway. This is the route that we're looking at today. We've been through Melfi, which is the Inter-Giro point, a fairly long, difficult climb there, and in fact the Giro d'Italia has finished there in the past. It was around about a 5-kilometer climb, and the last time, in fact, that the Giro finished at the top of that climb in Melfi, it was a great rider won there. That was Guido Bontempi, a great sprinter of the old days.
All right, well, why we've lost the pictures at the moment, in stage 2, that was a recovery of the day after all the shunts we've had on the race so far. And then the road, the action came thick and fast. Let's ask Paul Sherwin now to look back at yesterday's stage.
The proverbial early morning breakaway started the first part of Stage 2, but in the wake of Stage 1's carnage, team leaders were all closely guarded in the peloton. The catch came with 25 kilometers to go, and the mad dash up to Lucera was on. Danger lurked around every corner in the city streets, and uncertainty led to opportunity as Danilo attacked. But in the end, it was Danilo Hondo from Telecom who took advantage of Matteo's mistimed sprint. Rik Verbrugghe still has his 9-second lead. An apparent gap in the peloton had enabled Rik Verbrugghe to close within 4 seconds. But after officials looked back at the film, the gaps remained the same.
Yes, and we still feel they should have split time that peloton, but they didn't, and that's in the favour of the Belgian leader, Rik Verbrugghe, because he retained his 9 seconds overall lead in this race, despite the crash he's had today. He's now back safely in the pack. The lead of 3 riders now, Nicola Michele Gobi and Alexis Rodriguez, are 20 seconds clear. Now, these boys are pretty far down overall, so they won't be worrying the field just yet. They might just let them out there to dangle. We'll take another short break. And welcome back. The Giro d'Italia today heading to Potenza. 149 kilometres. We are in the centre of southern Italy, heading towards the Tirreno Sea. And the peloton down there, back under the escort of the boys in red from Lotto, are now chasing 3 riders who have pushed the lead out to 30 seconds. Nicola Michele lies 177th overall at 12 minutes 50. Michele Gobi is 174, 10:17 back. And the man who's just joined him, Alexis Rodriguez of the Kelme team, he is only 2 minutes 24 off the pace, and the man with most to gain at the moment.
He's in a pretty good position because as you look down on the main field here, you can see they're scattered right across the road. There is no serious pressure on in the main field at the moment because they realise that the 3 guys in front are not seriously dangerous in the overall standings. And still we keep getting this recurrent microwave link up from the motorbike to the helicopter. Potenza Immagini dall'Arrivo is the finishing picture, the finishing line in Potenza. This is what it looks like before the riders get in here with around about 1 hour's time. Those cars coming in there with the publicity caravan which precede this bike race. Once again, looking at the graphic, you can see there is a small breakaway off the front. The blue wheel is the small breakaway of 3 riders, followed by the pink wheel, which is the main field of the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey. Rik Verbrugghe, 28 seconds in arrears right now.
And we're looking here now at Alexis Rodriguez, who came up to the breakaway on his own. His plan quite clear, I think, Bob, because in about 4 to 5 kilometres time, we climb the only King of the Mountains prize of the day, and that'll be his hunting ground. If he can get a nice little gap there, he might hold on.
Well, the Giro has a rather difficult to understand classification of mountain points.
That is true.
And it seems like they give each climb almost the same points as the most difficult, apart from the Cima Coppi, which is supposed to be the highest point in the Giro. But right now, it's Domenico Gualdi, I believe, is the king of the mountain in the green jersey. And he won that on the first stage. He had no points yesterday, but he might have to defend a little bit by sprinting up there from the main peloton if he wants to keep the green jersey. Otherwise, most certainly look for the Kelme rider, Rodriguez, to go for those points and perhaps take the jersey again.
I think it was the little this misunderstanding in the rules last year that managed to keep the King of the Mountains jersey on the shoulders of Francesco Casagrande, because as far as we were all concerned, Kepe Gonzalez, the little climber from Colombia, was certainly the best climber of the Giro, and he was separated by a timing mechanism which was not compulsory, but they did bring it in at the last minute and fortunately managed to keep that jersey on the shoulders of Francesco Casagrande. Testa della Corsa in Italian means the front of the bike race. These are the leaders at 37 kilometers dall'Arrivo from the finishing line.
And there they are, Rodriguez, Gobi and Michele. And this is what we expected. We're starting the climb now for the King of the Mountains. Immediate acceleration by the little man from the Kelme team. This is his terrain now, and he's going to hurt the Italians if he gets half a shot at it, because he needs to build now more than a minute by the top of this climb, I think, to have any chance at all of hanging on for the finish. Now, it is quite a difficult undulating route into the finish, and we feel it will not be a big group sprint, and that might be why we haven't seen the sprinters teams coming up to the front to launch a chase yet.
Chance here, Phil, to look at the early weakness as we look there. Gruppo Maglia Rosa, meaning the group of the pink jersey are accelerating because there's another small group going off the front of the main field right now. But what I noticed immediately was there were not too many red jerseys on the front of this pack, which means that Lotto, after being in the driving seat for 3 days, are now starting to weaken.
I wonder if you're right, Paul, because Fassa Bortolo have got themselves a rider in this group. That's the riders of Dario Frigo. That isn't Frigo coming across. It's one of his teammates, but they're forming a chase group here. They've hit this hill very, very fast indeed. And for those riders who have been disturbed by the crash and have only sort of settled in after the hard chase back, this might prove doubly difficult now.
Certainly will. This is still the finishing line. Everybody waiting for the finish of the big bike race that's going to come in around about 45 minutes time, I would say now. And it's a pity we can't stay out there on the climb, Phil, because there is some serious action happening. For the moment, Rik Verbrugghe hasn't responded to any of it, and he may well be having a hard time after his crash.
That's the Paneria rider from Mexico, Perez, who rode an excellent Tour of Langkawi in Malaysia 2 years ago, and he finished second overall. Now, this is his favourite terrain too. His one ambition, by the way, is to be a king of the mountains in the Giro d'Italia, and maybe this year he's going to achieve that. He's off the road, chasing down the breakaways. When we come back, we hope the pictures are a little bit more steady. I'm back with the leaders now as we look here at the breakaway, beginning to change a little bit at the front. It looks to me as though we've got Freddie Martins there, Martinez, who's just got up to the leaders, has gone over the top and taken the small points at the sprint here. And Perez, we thought, had caught up, but I'm not sure where he's gone to at the moment, Paul.
Well, it's total chaos out here on the roads at the moment, but as you can see, the main field have decided to put the hammer down. Inseguitori means the following group, the chasing group, which is what we're looking at right now, the chasing group being, for the moment, the main field. They seem to be pretty much compact over the summit of that climb, but there was a big battle at the top of the King of the Mountains, and I think it actually went to the Kelme rider Rodriguez, who came back at the last possible moment, and he just nipped across the line in first place. So we'll have to see, as Bob says, just exactly what decision the judges go for, whether it will be a new leader or whether they'll leave the lead in the King of the Mountains on the shoulders of the Italian.
Well, just look at the chase here. We'll have a look at that sprint up the mountain again. Here we are. This is the Sella Italia rider, Freddie Martinez, having a chat there on his microphone with the director behind. Now, here's what happened. It was Freddie Martinez ahead of Rodriguez and Perez at the order over the top of the climb.
He came back,
magic of television.
He came back pretty rapidly there, Phil, almost from nowhere. It's so important over the first few days of the Giro to try and get yourself some points in the King of the Mountains competition, because once a hierarchy has been established, many of the other riders don't actually go for that competition, and it goes down to a competition raced out between 4 or 5 bike riders.
So now these riders trying to get themselves organised here. This is Alexis Rodriguez setting the pace now. Perez tucked in on the back there, the only Mexican competitor in the race. He's a great climber, youngster, starting his 3rd year as a professional. And alongside him, having just raced up and stole the points from under the nose, was Freddie Martinez of the Sella Italia team. Now, our picture's still remaining unkind to us today, coming from the heart of Italy. And it's probably the wooded area which is causing much of the problems, because that interferes with the uplink, which goes up to our helicopter. That's why our Italian producers keep sending us back to the finish, where, by the way, the temperature is warming up. It's getting a bit more like the Italy we've all come to love and know now. It's around about 79 degrees Fahrenheit today at the finishing line. The rider's very happy too. It is now dry again. These 3 riders, if they can hold this tempo, Bob, because it is not a flat road, but just a shade over 20 miles to go down to the line as well.
Yeah, they're increasing their advantage a little bit. Lotto, like you said, Paul, not having the real strength that they've shown in the first couple of stages, maybe bringing Verbrugghe back from his crash, spent some of the energy of the other riders on the team. Also, defending the pink jersey is quite difficult, not just for the guy that has it, but for the whole team. It's very nerve-wracking. They'll try to hold it together as long as possible before we see the attacks like this one right here that's coming up to the breakaway. We'll have to get a look at who's in this breakaway. A Lamprey rider there on the front. See who else is in there.
Well, that's a turn for the book now, because joining him here is Juan Garate of Spain. He's the Lamprey rider and forward of camera. And we're also getting some riders now from Once join. Looks like Danilo. Oh, no, was it Clavero? Was it a Mercatoniano rider, that, Paul?
That was Clavero, yes.
Clavero, yes. Clavero's just come up as well.
Confirmation of the GPM, the King of the Mountains competition. Martinez across the line in first place ahead of Rodriguez. But the hammer is certainly down now as we head down into the town of Potenza. And in fact, Potenza has finished The Giro has finished here 15 times before, and I tell you what, Phil, there's a lot of big names have won the stage here. As you mentioned earlier, the first man to win in 1929 was Alfredo Binda, but great names like Roger de Vlaming took out the victory here back in 1975. And also, two interesting little facts. In fact, in 1965, Adorni won the stage here and went on to win the Giro d'Italia. Following that, in '86, Roberto Vicentini also got the stage win here and went on to win the Giro. So I wonder if we're going to see a pretty big battle for the victory here today, because you look at the speed out on the road, Bob, they're absolutely hammering along.
They are flying in this finale right now. It is on. They are in one line. It's got to be a lot of attacks. And here's a breakaway that we saw being established earlier. A bunch of cars have come up in between. That means that they have a pretty good gap. All of the neutral service cars are following them now. So they have a pretty good gap now.
They certainly do.
Go on, Paul, yeah.
And you can see that looking back there, there are one or two riders getting peeled off the back of the main field as well, because the hammer over that climb was right on everybody at the moment. And as you can see, as we said earlier, this is a very technical run-in off the descent of that big mountain, the Castel Lago Pezzole, which comes at 115 kilometers covered in the bike race, 35 kilometers to go over the summit. And the worst place you can be right now is in the last 10 or 15 places in this group, because you don't get a chance to take your own line around the corners. And that's why you'll see all of the big leaders, the men who are looking at winning this bike race after 3 weeks, will try and ride in the first 10 or 15 places, because they keep out of trouble and they're able then to pick their own line around these very technical corners.
Well, the pack here reconsolidating at the back as riders keep creeping up after being split off on that small climb. This is the body of the field here, as we now go back to the front and under control of the Lotto boys again. I'm not sure Rik Verbrugghe is going to win today's stage or continue in the tradition and go on to win the Giro d'Italia today, though, Paul, because this will be a tough call for him today. At the moment, they're chasing down Rodriguez, Martinez and Perez. And little Freddie Martinez, by the way, is a rider who's not too far up the overall classification, but he is a good climber. And terrain tomorrow, remember, that will change because we go into a fairly hilly stretch of road tomorrow. That's going to please an awful lot of riders. So the race goes on, and here is Perez still agitating, and we'll take a break. And welcome back to the Giro d'Italia. There you can see we're riding at an average speed today of 40 kilometers an hour. That's 25 miles an hour, due to finish in about 43 minutes from now. And we are, in fact, 29 kilometers from the finish. Well, the race has all come back together again now. The sprinters might be getting their tails up, although we think it's not a great sprint finish day, because look at that. The road steadily uphill now with a nasty little approach to the finish yet again. We always seem to throw in one or two nasties at the finish for the riders in the Giro. Well, if you're just tuning in, we've had a sensational day so far. So let's recap on the day's action, and we'll rejoin it back at the start in Lucera. And a happy Rik Verbrugghe at the start. Slightly overcast conditions, but threatening to warm up as they rolled away. He's become quite a star in just 3 days of wearing the famed Maglia Rosa in the Giro d'Italia. But then, within 2 hours of racing, he was on the floor. Two of his teammates were down with him. He took a new bike. At this point, we thought he was injured, but happily he was not. They raced him back up to the field after he lost half a minute, and he got back in the pack. All is well for the pink jersey so far. The only break of the day has been swept up, and there we are, back with live action, Paul. So a few deep breaths and a great sigh of relief, I would think.
Certainly, 28 kilometers to go, and as they say in Italian, gruppo compacto, meaning the whole of the main field is all together at the moment. But that's certainly not the way it's going to be on the run into the finish. You can see already one or two riders who've been involved in crashes, trying to survive at the rear end of the field. And the man we're looking at here is Nathan O'Neill, the former Australian time trial champion. These riders who've had these crashes over the first couple of days will try and nurse themselves through for a day or so and hope that their injuries recover, hope they start to get onto the mend, and hope that they can be competitive later on in this bike race. Because let's not forget this is a 22-day event. So even the smallest injury can keep you out of the bike race.
Yes, Nathan O'Neill there made the Olympic Games in Australia, which was a great moment for him because, of course, he comes from the region of Sydney, where the Olympic Games were last year. He's had a rough ride so far, though. He had a great start of the season with a win in the time trial stage of the Tour of Langkawi in Malaysia, but that was way back in February. and now he's getting roughed up a bit on the Giro d'Italia so far. He'll like the long time trial though, and he'll be a favourite to get a place on the podium in that, although he wasn't very happy with the short 7.6 kilometre time trial which opened up this event. The Lotto boys called into action again now to try and hold this race together in favour of their team leader, Rik Verbrugghe. They've got a two-pronged attack just now because they also have a very good sprinter on the team in Jeroen Blijlevens, but I think that's taking a back seat just now. They're rather busy.
Certainly not a finish for Jeroen Blijlevens today, but it is good to see that he has become competitive over the last couple of days, and he's doing an awful lot of work for the team. But the sad thing on a run-in like this for riders as Bob and myself were is, although you think you've got over the big climb of the day, there is actually not an ounce of flat on the run into the finish now, and it's still a lot of ground for riders to attack.
Oh, absolutely. They've been going around about 43 kilometers an hour on average. That's what's been predicted for the finish line based on their progress so far. That's actually quite fast, especially when you consider the hills and the hills to come in the finale. Makes it very difficult for the sprinters. They like to have a nice gradual build up to the finish where they can explode over the line, but I don't think that's going to be the case today.
But Rik Verbrugghe is going to have to be very attentive on this run into the finish line because his lead, Bob, is just a slender one at 9 seconds. And what we're going to see, I'm sure, is riders like Danilo Hondo and Dario Frigo just very close to the overall lead, try to steal it away from him. And he seems now to have had his numbers of teammates at the front of the bike race reduced because there are only 3 guys from Lotto in at the front.
They've had a hard time so far keeping Rik out of trouble, keeping him back up to the front, especially when you consider that crash. And I think the Italians will be really attacking, and I think that you will see nobody cooperating with Rik Verbrugghe from any of the Italian riders or teams if in case there is a breakaway with some of the danger man like Dario Frigo, Danilo Hondo. He'll have to cover all of those breakaways by himself. He's down to about 4 teammates pulling on the front. That's going to make it very hard in the finale. We might see a change in the jersey today, actually.
This is also another thing. If you're trying to win a bike race which is 3 weeks long, the important thing really is to try and save as much energy as possible. The Lotto team have been using a lot of energy over the first few days, and the big teams like Faso Bortolo have been making efforts, but not long concerted efforts. They're saving it for the last week.
Yes, absolutely. And also, we saw Danilo Hondo make a little bit of an attack yesterday in the run-in. He backed off, it seemed like. He just threw that in there to stretch his legs a little bit. We'll see him start to be more explosive and more aggressive in these finales.
And let's not forget too, the sleepers in the race today, like Abraham Olano, Marco Pantani, keeping their noses clean but holding on to the high positions now in this race. Riders who can come good, maybe even tomorrow. Although I think you said earlier, Paul, Pantani's worried about the climbs tomorrow.
He's a little worried about the first climbs. He's worried about the first week because he said he's come into this Giro. He feels exceptionally good at the moment, but he trained very hard over the last few weeks coming into the Giro d'Italia. He's worried about the first big climb, but maybe Marco is being somewhat of a diplomat and he's trying to move attention away from himself. It is a mountaintop finish tomorrow, but I think it is always very difficult, the first big mountain climb. And Pantani this year does not have an awful lot of competition in his legs. And we saw last year in the Giro that he came into form in the last week. So maybe that's why he's just a little worried about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, looking, here's Nathan O'Neill at the back here, keeping his nose clean on the tail of the peloton, right down there at the very end, bottom left of our picture. It's a long way to the front, isn't it? Especially if you get yourself out of position. And the object of the race still for the Lotto boys to keep the pace high. And my goodness me, they're doing that today with an average speed of 26 miles an hour. They are making it nearly impossible for anybody to get off the front.
They're keeping the pace high, but this is quite easy at the moment because they're taking in a fair amount of descending. As we get closer to the finish, though, it will be more difficult to control at the front because the road, as you can see, is undulating. It's up and down all the time, twisting around all of these small little climbs in the outskirts of Potenza, and that is once they get a little bit closer and start to smell the stage victory, that a lot of Italian riders will come to the front and start to launch the attacks. Just a quick point of interest at the moment, there are 2 bike riders celebrating their birthdays today. Fabio Sacchi, who was involved in that crash on the first day, is 27 years old today. And also one of the riders on the Kelme squad, Francisco Leoni, he's 28. So watch out for him on the run into the finish.
So we know which hotels to go to for the champagne. Thanks, Paul. Now, looking at the whole field down there at the moment, good time to remind ourselves as to the overall situation. It's not changed in the last 24 hours. Verbrugghe leads Frigo by 9 seconds. Ruska the prologue winner of a year ago. He's third. Alano is there, you see, in a great position in fourth. And Piccoli completes the top 6. Of other big names, though, watch this now. Simoni is 12th. Big danger. Finished third last 2 years in the race. Pantani, the winner a couple of years ago, is 15th. And Jan Ullrich, he's the man with a lot of work to do at 2 minutes 34. Jan Ullrich there sitting in 85th place. Now, we've just noticed, well, we didn't just notice, but we'll tell you that there are 2 riders called Verbrugghe on the Lotto Adecco team. There's Rik Verbrugghe and Rik Verbrugghe. Now, I think it's been pretty fast work on behalf of the parents there because they're exactly 1 year apart in their age, Paul. I'm pretty certain I'm right in saying they are brothers. And in fact, this is the first year as a pro for younger brother Lef, and he's having to work pretty hard for Rik. So there we are. That's a little bit of trivia for you. This is Kurt van Lanker, who's also working hard for the same duo of the Lotto right now, as the race continues at a high speed towards the finish in Potenza. No one yet has got away. The sprinters might soon start licking their lips, so we'll take a break. Now we're back with the race here, looking here at the Alexia rider Ivan Karanta. Now, Paul, a tip for the top at the end of the day because he's in trouble here.
Tip for the top, but he's in the wrong position for it right now. He's got the whole of his team. He has been left behind over the last couple of kilometres. They're trying to pace him back, but the way that the Lotto squad at the front were hammering, I don't think the Alexia boys are going to come back into the fold this afternoon. Unless running into town, there are a few slowings down of the main field. Mario Cipollini, though, is right in there. This is the Gruppo Maglia Rosa, the group of the pink jersey. Cipollini was right in there, looking pretty comfortable. And that's the big advantage that Mario Cipollini seems to have now. He hasn't got the speed of an Ivan Quaranta, but he's got the resistance to get himself over these small climbs in this Italian area.
Absolutely. He's doing a great job to be near the front for the finale. Just things haven't really worked out to his advantage so far, but maybe today they will if things stay together. It was a very hard climb yesterday, and we had the rain the day before, and 20 Ks ago, a really hard climb. So we'll see. Alexia might get back into the group at this point. They've got 4 guys back there helping Quaranta, but he might get dropped again on the other hills to climb before the finish. So it's kind of, to me, in my mind, if you're the sports director, it's a hard decision to make. You get some guys up in the front that could go in breakaways, or do you send them all back to help Quaranta get back into the front? Maybe they know the finish a little bit better than we do, and they can hope that he gets back in the front and has a chance at the sprint.
Well, the one thing they do know, that he's not going to win the stage tomorrow because it finishes at the top of a huge mountain. Ivan Quaranta has got his teammates around him, but this is a serious risk for a team manager to make a decision like that. I would have said, well, forget it. Let him finish the stage today. Let him get over these small climbs on the run into the finish, and there are still plenty of flat stages for Ivan Quaranta in this Giro d'Italia. The front of the group there is still the red train of Lotto, going to lead the riders into these final few kilometres. It's a pretty compact group, so I wonder what happened to Quaranta there. He may well have just gone through a bad patch over that final climb, but he's not a great climber.
No, that's what happened. He isn't a great climber, that's for sure. But he is a very fast finisher, arguably now the fastest rider in the Giro d'Italia. We'll find out maybe one day this week, but I'm not so sure it's going to be today. His team have now got him into the convoy of cars, and that's very important. Once into the car convoy, you can use a little bit of professional tactics, if you like. You nip in and out the cars, don't you, Bob? Take a little bit of a rest and keep going forward.
That's another decision that the officials have to make, if they should gap the cars from the back of the peloton so riders can't use them to come back across, or just how close do they get to go back to the peloton. And if you get 20 or 30 cars stretched out, that's quite a bit of time, actually, and you can nip around each one and actually get back into the front as long as the officials give you a break there.
Well, this is a very long convoy of cars because, in fact, the ritardo di 40, the graphic was telling us, was 1 minute and 10 seconds from the main field. And in the Giro d'Italia, as in the Tour de France, they actually have 2 convoys of cars. You have team manager number 1 and team manager number 2. And what has happened there is they've actually stopped the second convoy of cars. So now there's going to be a big 1 minute gap between Ivan Quaranta and the tail end of the front group, which now seems to be changing a little bit. There's a metamorphosis going on here. The fact that Mario Cipollini is in this group means that he may well be thinking of a victory. Tiempo previsto all'arrivo means there are 20 minutes left to go to the finish, and the speed you can see is pretty high. Confirmation of the Gruppo to Quaranta is 1 minute and 10 seconds right now. I think that's close to the finish, Phil. Ivan Quaranta's out for the day.
I think you're probably right, but you never know. There might be a little slowdown at the front, although the team here from Lotto are driving this race on, keeping it high enough to stop anybody spinning off the front, although right now I don't think too many guys want to even consider spinning off the front. Looking down there, they've got the pink jersey too, the Ciclamino jersey of the points leader, that's Gabriele Colombo. And also Cocchioli is the man who's the leader of the Intergiro, that's a blue jersey. The green jersey in this race is worn by the leader of the King of the Mountain, that's Domenico Gualdi at this minute. But he's now being challenged there by Freddy Martinez, who scored the points today in the King of the Mountains, where he beat Alexis Rodriguez and Perez. So that's the situation with only one man in trouble right now, Caranta, and he's thinking only of a stage win rather than winning the Giro d'Italia. The Leaky Gas boys here were looking too at those riders who are riding pretty well today. This is Mirko Marini. He's also been in the attacks a couple of days ago. They are moving so fast. It's overcast in Italy, but it's still pretty warm. When we come back, we'll be a little bit closer nearer the finish, and I think they'll still be together. And while we look here at the head of the peloton, which is now changing partners at the front, because the Mappe boys, the team of the race winner last year, Stefano Garzelli, have come to the front. The latest gap we got on the dramatic chase, at least as far as Ivan Caranta is concerned, the sprinter, he is now just within 1 minute of catching the bunch.
Going to be a hard chance for him because we are so close to the finish right now, and there are one or two sticky little climbs. In fact, there's a nice climb around about 4 kilometers to go as well, which will catch one or two riders out with a typical technical descent down into the city. As you can see, the driving seat now has been swapped over from the Lotto squad to another team who've come forward to take up the responsibility of keeping the pace high. Inseguitori is the chasing group, so it may well be there's a couple of Lotto boys here have managed to join in to the Alexia chase.
Well, the Mappe team must have reason, they must have some confidence here to have decided to take up at the front. Now, what's the reason for that, Bob? Why would Mappe come and give a handout to Lotto?
They probably want to keep Garzelli out of trouble, and you know what I've noticed in this finale is that our GC guys aren't really as aggressive as they have been. They might want a little bit of a rest day in lieu of tomorrow's big climb to Monte Vergine when it finishes on the top of the mountain. That's Stadio Frigo. It's nice to have a day when nothing happens at all. When you stay in the group, you never go out in the wind, especially if you're going for GC in a 3-week race. You don't crash, you don't get a flat tire. A day like that can actually improve your fitness, and you will feel really good on a big stage like we're going to see tomorrow.
This looks like David Bramati setting the pace now for Mappe, keeping it nice and high. Garzelli's their team leader. He wears number 1 as last year's winner. They don't have a real super fast sprinter. The Stefano Zanini's probably their best, wears number 9. This is the face of Ivan Caranta, looking cool and collected, but I think he's still a long way behind here. And I'm not too sure now whether he's decided or realised they're not going to get back.
Pretty much sure now, Phil, they've given up. You can see the expression on his face. He realises they had a hard chase for around about 10 kilometres, and the time gap now stretching out to 1 minute and 10 seconds. So for those guys at the back of the race, it's all over now. This is Luca Scinto moving forward as well for Mappe. Right on his wheel there at 15 kilometres to go is Stefano Zanini. That is a tough bike rider. He's a man who can ride the classics. He rides very well in the major tours. In fact, he took out last year the final stage of the Tour de France on the Champs-Élysées. He's a good bike rider, but today, maybe they're trying to set something up for a stage win for Mappe.
That's a possibility. They haven't really done much of at all in this Giro so far. That whole team had a pretty rough spring this year when they're used to dominating the classic season. They have got to have some pressure on them for some results. Biggest budget, most riders in the world. They've been the #1 team for 5 or 6 seasons. They need to get something happening, and maybe today's the day they decided to go on a full-out attack in the finale.
Let's not forget the team actually blew up this winter because half of the team, the Belgian section of the team, left to form the new Domo Farm Frites team, losing men like Johan Museo, Wilfred Peters, the big strong boys. So it's a slightly different team this year. They've had to change their preparation. They were not great in the classics. This is Luca Scinto on the front, the man that we saw clutching onto his shoulders at the side of the road just 2 days ago in that dramatic crash. Amazing, Bob, isn't it, how in a major tour like this, if you're a tough guy, you can bounce back.
Well, Luca Scinto and Stefano Zanini are 2 of the toughest guys in the bunch. You crash, it seemed like he broke his collarbone and his race was already over, but got back on his bike, managed to finish with the group in the time limit. Now he's back on the front of the race just 2 days later. That's a testament to the human spirit and what it's capable of doing day after day on a hard race like this.
Still a very big group, another one of these small climbs leading into the finishing town of Potenza. The riders will have covered 149 kilometers by the time they get to the finish line right now. And still, Phil, we're getting reports that Mario Cipollini is riding pretty close to the front. So maybe this is going to be the day that Super Mario is going to roar. But I do get the feeling that in the final few kilometers, we're going to see a vicious attack coming from a group of 3 or 4 riders trying to get themselves off the front.
Well, you might be right. Martin Vastia there, the Slovenian rider for Alessio, is now taking up the running. But all of the riders just keep coming through and doing their little bit and dropping back as a rider moves up to give a hand. That's Christoph Brandt of Lotto to try and contribute a little bit to the pace-making for Rik Verbrugghe. But just look at the speed. These riders are spiralling up this climb here. And they can't say they've got a tailwind because they're going in every direction. But they are keeping a terrifically quick tempo here. They've destroyed the ace sprinter Ivan Caranta today. Whether he dropped back or whether he had a puncture, we don't know. But he's certainly a minute behind the field and won't be getting the victory today in Potenza. The question is, who will? And we'll know shortly. We'll take a break. A little glance at the back of the Giro d'Italia today. A wry smile, I think that's what it was, of Ivan Caranta, because with 11 kilometres to go to the finish now, Caranta is not going to see the head of the bunch. And as we speak, we've got a little attack going here from Joaquim Lopez Terrella of the Kelme team.
Well, Kelme always looking for these small moves off the front. He's immediately joined by one of the Italian teams as well, but the control on the front of the main field has completely changed. And in fact, that rider on the front right now is wearing the Spanish national jersey. He rides for the Once squad. They seem to be taking a certain amount of interest in setting the pace at the moment, because I've felt over the last couple of days that although they've got Jan Ruska placed very high in the overall standings, Abraham Olano is looking like a man who wants a serious crack at victory in this year's Giro d'Italia.
Well, this is the Kelme boy, and this is one of their last chances to try and get away before the sprinters do get a sniff at the finish today. And it's a good move by Joaquim Lopez Terrella. He's a Spaniard. Meanwhile, our Italian cameras are making sure they know exactly where Ivan Caranta is, but they may as well forget him now because he's at the wrong end today. Way behind, about a minute and a half now, the latest time gap. There's another attack here. This is Sergio Barbaro. He's on form, Bob.
He's a very good racer. I believe he raced for Mercatone Uno. He won a lot of races on that team, being Marco Pantani's teammate. And while Marco Pantani was out of action with a number of problems that he had, crashes and suspensions and whatnot, Sergio Barbaro kept that team together, kept them in the headlines. Was a very good racer, won some very difficult races like Tre Valle Varesine in the north of Italy. A hilly race, much like the one we have today. Lots of short little climbs in the finale, just like today's race. And that guy is a good bike racer, and that's a very hard attack.
Well, he's got some good form too, and you saw the huge pedaling gear he was pushing there as he sprinted away. Very high gear, lots of resistance, but if you have the strength to turn it, then of course you get the gap very quickly. A little bit of reorganization now at the front of the pack as we pass under the 10 kilometers to go sign. Our two escapers, and I'm not too sure who's reached up to him yet, but we'll find out shortly. And it looks as though Barbaro is trying to bridge the gap as well. This is Joaquim Lopez Terrella at the 10 kilometers to go.
You can see, Phil, coming into this town, it is a very technical run into the finishing line, and these two riders are going to have a hard time because at the front of the main pack, the hammer is absolutely down. They're screaming along, and we're looking now at speeds in excess of 60 kilometers an hour on some of these descents. But there are one or two little climbs still in the last 10 kilometers, and that's when these riders, they will ride completely together. Faso Bortolo in the white are moving to the front too, because they've got Dmitry Konishev, who's a very good bike rider when it comes to one or two of these little run-ins. But Mario Cipollini is also in there in the red jersey too. He doesn't have a lot of teammates around him right now, and that's something Mario Cipollini doesn't like when it comes into the sprints. But this is the kind of finish that Mario Cipollini may well have to take advantage of, because he doesn't have the speed of an Ivan Caranta, who is missing today.
Well, that's, I was about to say, that looks like Gorazd Stanguly, and there we have the confirmation of that. Well, Gorazd is a very, very good rider, winner of the Tour of Australia, the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic a couple of years ago. He's a good stage race rider, and he's having a very good season, and he's moved in and slipped into a good move here. Now, this, you know, is a very serious attack, and it could work.
Well, this is what all of these riders have been looking for. They know, as we look at the Gruppo Maglia Rosa, the group of the pink jersey, they are around about 10 or 15 seconds behind right now as they bore down on the three leaders. But they are trying to keep themselves safe at the moment too, aren't they, Bob? Because you can see this is a very difficult technical approach into the finish.
It is a tough approach to the finish, and it was interesting to see Mario Cipollini so close to the front of the group there, just behind the leaders of who were making the tempo, but he was by himself. None of his teammates seemed to be around him. He might have moved up to show his teammate that he is ready to sprint today. He wants his guys to come up to the front and do the thing that we've seen so many times, the red train of Saeco, carrying him to the finish line. They peel off with about 150, 200 meters to go, and then Super Mario takes his chance. Very technical, lots of curvy. Mario, or anybody else that wants to have a chance for this stage, has got to be up in the front of the group right now. We can see what has happened all along this race. Lots of crashes, people standing all over these streets. It's crazy now.
Well, it's looking pretty good for these three riders right now. Their advantage is 16 seconds over the rest. But there's real chaos in the group right now, Bob, as these guys throw themselves around these corners. The referees have managed to get most of the motorbikes out of the way. And people are always asking, well, don't the motorbikes get in the way of the bike riders on a run-in like this? But very often in a breakaway situation like this, you will actually you will use the motorbike, won't you, to see just how he brakes and how much the motorbike leans over going into the corner, knowing then that you don't have to brake yourself.
Stangeli putting his hand on the back of the Kilme rider there. Not really, when you do that, it's generally because you want to sit on and you don't want to take a pull. You get the other guy back into the group to take his pull at the front. They're working well together. It'd be hard, though, to keep the peloton at bay on a nice, wide-open boulevard like this. They need a little bit more curves, maybe a few hills to stay away. It's going to be close, though.
Well, I'll tell you, Stanley here is working so hard, Bob. 26 overall, 69 seconds off the pink jersey. He's got a lead now. Let's have a look. Wow, that's a good 30 seconds, Bob. A small bonus for the victory. If he gets about 20 more seconds down the road, we suddenly have a new race leader.
That would be a very big surprise.
This is a chance here just to look at the excitement and encouragement there coming. You could see Stangeli on the right-hand side there waving forward the other riders. He's encouraging them to come forward and ride as hard as they can. They know they've got to build up 30 or 40 seconds before they get into the last 5 kilometers, because then the main field will pick the speed up to 70 kilometers an hour, and that 30 seconds can get wiped away in no time at all. They're fortunately now on the wide boulevard which runs around the outside of the city of Potenza. 6 kilometers to go down to the finishing line. That's going to take these riders around about 8 minutes at this speed at the moment, and Stangeli, I feel, certainly is the man pushing the most urgent movement at the front of this group.
Well, this is an excellent opportunity. They're saying 15 seconds. It looked a little bit longer to me, but it's always difficult to estimate. There's the peloton now, and it's going to have to bring back into play sooner or later the Lotto boys as well as other teams, because otherwise Goran Stangeli, he comes from Slovenia, by the way. He's now 28 years of age, and he's had one win this year in the Tour of Tuscany in Italy. He speaks Italian. He also speaks English, thank heavens, when we talk to him, Paul.
He certainly does. 5 kilometers now to go. It's going to be touch and go for these riders. It's Once really who seem to be all over the front of the main pack right now, and we're coming into the outskirts of the city. You can see now again one of these small undulations. 15 seconds is the time gap, and after a big long ride over 3 or 4 kilometers like this, these really hurt. But Stangeli looks very, very comfortable. He's able to talk and encourage the other riders into this group to keep riding. Barbaro himself in second position there is a rider who's ridden so well so far this year. He was 4th overall in the Henninger-Term one-day race. As we look at the sign telling us this is the Testa della Corsa, that's the place to be, the head of the bike race. But looking back there now, Phil, around that corner, I can see the shadow of the main field, but this is a tough run-in.
It's a very discouraging place for Stangeli to be in right now, because he has great legs today. It's obvious he wants to have the guys in the breakaway with him have legs equal to him, and they can really push the tempo. So it's kind of frustrating for Stangeli. He's going flat out now to the finish line. He has a really good chance, and it wouldn't surprise me if he started to drop these two guys in the breakaway with him.
Well, this is a tough climb now. I tell you what, he is going to just rip himself apart here, because here he goes again. He is now one ambition, and that's to get his hands on the leader's pink jersey. I don't think a Slovenian rider has ever worn the pink jersey in the Giro d'Italia. In fact, I'm sure he hasn't. And Stangeli could be racing to a little bit of history here now. Barbaro has found the strength, but Tirella has gone back, and we're 4 kilometres to go, Paul.
Well, Barbaro has responded. He knew he has to stay in contact here, but definitely Lopez has gone back. The Kelme rider under serious pressure now. 2 leaders at the front of this bike race, but it's a tenuous lead. It's only 10 seconds. Ibernesto.com are launching the attack now. They're trying to put somebody across into the leading group of 2. This is a most unbelievable run-in into the town, much more difficult than the race handbook predicted. And that's the difficult thing for these guys. They look at the race handbook, plan their strategy, and sometimes when you get into town, it's a lot harder than you could ever have imagined.
Well, there's a good reason for Ivan Caranta not to bother to get back on the field today, because he wouldn't have been mixing it on this climb. As we continue towards the finish and the 3 kilometres to go sign. You see the flick there of the right arm. Well, that's the sure sign to come on through and give me a hand. Benesto here are trying to get on terms, and it looked to me as though it might have been Brussegin who is trying to reach them, but we'll get a mark on him at the moment. Here he is. And it's not, it's his teammate, it's Pablo Garcia, another Spanish rider trying to get across.
And this is a bad moment for the 2 leaders now as we look at the Testa della Corsa. They have got 1 rider coming across, but his advantage over the main field is not more than 10 or 20 metres. And over the last couple of metres, you know, the main field are really going to pick it up. Stangali is looking very good. He keeps twitching his arm, as you say, but there is the main field now. There's a pink jersey on the front. This is Team Telecom being much more serious about the run into the finish. They obviously got a lot of morale from that win yesterday of Danilo Hondo. Moving further forward there, you can see the Spanish riders from Once, and not too far behind that, the pink jersey of Rik Verbrugghe. But also, watch out for a time in the sprint today, because certainly Dario Frigo, the man who leads now Faso Bortolo, he wants to get the pink jersey before tomorrow's stage.
This is Pablo Lastras Garcia trying to get on terms, and he's going to give it his best shot, but that really is an incredibly close run thing behind now. And as Paul has said, Telecom taking a big interest. Stanglish trying to take a little bit of a breather here. We're in the streets of Potenza, a well-known town for riders in the Giro d'Italia since this race began. And they're welcoming now a Slovenian with a chance, a very slim one, I have to say, of becoming the new leader of the Tour.
It's a totally mad run into the finish here. You can see the pink of Team Telecom on the front, keeping the pace as high as possible. I can't see Danilo Hondo anywhere at all. But in the front, Marco Pantani is 5 riders from the front of the main pack. He is looking super serious now to keep himself high in the overall standings. There are the 2 leaders. Their advantage, Phil, not more than 5 seconds right now. Stangali flicking his arm. Come on, we've got to keep going. We've got to survive until we get caught. They're inside 2 kilometres to go now. Stangali in second position, looking over his shoulder. But there is the main field. It's not much, but it could be enough as long as you don't sit up and wait. But behind, look at the reaction. There's bike riders all over the front of this main group now. Another corner, and there they are, right on the tail of the 2 leaders. Barbaro attacks. Barbaro now with 2 kilometres to go, trying to leave Stangali behind, but the main field is on them.
Well, you have to feel Bob Roll and Paul Sherwin have both been in this position before, but the peloton, the big pack, have timed the catch again. They've got Stanglish. He's back, but it's a perfect time, Bob, to launch the counter move.
Yeah, well, a counter-attack right now would be coming from the riders that don't have such a high top end like Mario Cipollini. Might be a little bit of a drag up to the finish line, a bit of a false flat. 1 kilometre to go now. Very exciting finale. This is fantastic bike racing.
Barbaro has still got it, still got a slight advantage, looks over his shoulder, but his legs are burning right now. There is the Flamme Rouge, ultimo kilometro, 1 kilometre to go. They're right on his wheel, but he will not give up right now. The sprinters, Phil, if there are any still in this group, are queuing up right behind him. Watch out for Danilo Hondo, yesterday's winner. He certainly has got the form. There are pink jerseys at the front of that group there. Everybody's looking round. Mario Cipollini may well be in 10th or 15th place, but it's all back together right now, and they're lining themselves up for the final 500 metres of this 149-kilometre stage.
So Sergio Barbaro never won a stage in the Giro d'Italia. It won't be today. 600 metres out, he's been swept up. Again, it's Kolpak, it looks like, the surprising team who has got the riders back up to the front once more for what is now going to be a sprint. Danilo Hondo and Giovanni Lombardi are also up there now, the 2 sprinters from the Deutsche Telekom team, as the leader and the pacemakers drop out. And a quick run now by Stefano Garzelli on the left of our picture, trying to get through on the inside now, and it's a grit of the teeth here, but it looks as though it's Lombardi this time who's going to get to the line, but Hondo has gone over the top of him. This is a tremendous hit. Danilo Hondo is coming again now as he tries to go over the line. Win number 2 out of 2 days, surely on the line. Hondo holds it as he comes up to the line now. Will he come soon enough? Yes, he gets it on the line. Well, I can't recall when the German riders have taken back-to-back stage wins. We've had 2 German stage wins in the past 10 years. Well, 3 if we count yesterday's win by Hondo. Now we've got another one.
We have to go back to Marcel Wust winning a stage, but 2 stages on the run is something that everybody wishes for. Again, perfectly set up by Team Telecom there, Phil, and it really did go right down to the finishing line. Endrio Leoni looks to me as if he was pretty much in with a chance there as well, but he did not have the power there to come over the line of Danilo Hondo. Would like to go back and have a pretty close look at the photo finish there, because it was very tight and it looked as if Hondo was dying as he crept up towards the finishing line. But Team Telecom came here to prepare for the Tour de France as the Spanish supporters are celebrating Abraham Olano's high place in the overall standings. It was not Eviva España this afternoon, it was Deutschland, Deutschland über alles.
Indeed, indeed. Well, the Germans have got 2 out of 2 now. The only German team in the race is Hondo. We're looking here at the points leader, Gabriele Colombo. The others trailing in, having been spat out of the back of the race on that long climb up to the finish. This looks like the back of Marco Pantani. He's nice and safely in. One of his teammates is, as always, protecting his team captain and blocks him from our camera as we look back down the finishing straight here at the end of stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia. The clock will continue to count, because still out there, we know, is Ivan Caranta. The Mercatoni Uno boys will feel all very happy as Marco Pantani takes them all away now to buy them dinner, no doubt, in the nearby hotel. Here's the sprint again, which has given the German Deutsche Telekom team win number 2 in as many days. It was Giovanni Lombardi, who was also a good sprinter, who led him out well, but had to put him into the first position an awful long way out here. And there was a moment when I thought he wasn't going to hang on, because it took a long time for that finishing line to come into view. But this is becoming a very familiar 2-arm salute now by Danilo Hondo of Germany. 2 out of 2 for the German riders. This is another view from the far right of our picture. And if you look down the field there, there's quite a lot of riders. I think we can say they will all be given the same time today. I don't see any gaps in the peloton as they come across the line. Look at the face here on Hondo. And the Alessio rider there fighting it out, I think. I'll try and nail him down for you. I can't, so I'll tell you in a minute's time. But it could be Alexander Schaefer as he sprints up to the line, and in fact it is Leona. We'll take a break. And there he is, just winning the stage of the Tour of Italy today, stage number 3, his second in 4 days of this race, Danilo Hondo of Germany. So the Deutsche Telekom boys, I hope they kept some money in the budget and didn't spend it all on champagne last night, because they're going to go through it all again now.
We could, Phil, be seeing the birth of a new sprinter, because this man just 3 years ago on a small German team took out 16 victories in 1 year. And I think now that he's riding the Giro d'Italia without Erik Zabel being there, he's going to prove to the team that he is the next big German sprinter, because that was a very confident win. Faso Bortolo boys, they are pretty confident. They're currently leading the team standings at the moment, and that's something that might change as we go into the mountains, because that will be the terrain of the Kelme squad. The man with a little goatee beard there, Fabio Baldato, wears number 1 in this team. A little bit of a surprise, really, because Casagrande was the number 1 leader, but Fabio Baldati is a great team captain to have.
Here we are, the rough and tumble. This is Endrio Leoni on the left. I've got him now, you see. He's had a great season so far. He's won 5 or 6 races, and he thought he was going to take out this one as well, because I think Danilo Hondo almost misjudged the run to the finish. He had no choice. His teammate Lombardi couldn't keep him there any longer, but he made it nicely. So he gets the stage victory. 2 wins for him, a couple of World Cup ranking points as well. So let's remind ourselves as we look now at the blank home straight here in Potenza. Let's just remember that tomorrow is a big, tough day with the riders going off into the mountains. And let's have a look at that map and see where the riders do go, because this is a tough one, and the first tough one of this year's Tour as far as terrain is concerned. We're heading out now to the other side of the leg of Italy, from Potenza onto the Tirreno Sea to Montevergine di Mercogliano. And on the way, we climb the mountains, and there they are. And we climb right up to the finish, too, of around about 4,500 feet. So Ivan Caranta won't be thinking of winning tomorrow either. Back to the boys behind the scenes. His presentation is now ready. Danilo Hondo is the rider now who has won the stage. I can tell you that Endrio Leoni is in second place, and Andrej Hauptman got the 3rd place. Massimo Strazza is 4th, David Rebellin finished 5th, and Stefano Garzelli, we saw him coming at a run, and there we are. He's not quite on the board, but Stefan Garzelli finished in 6th place today, with Rebellin sprinting very well in that sort of company, taking 5th. Well, this has been a good day of racing, one of a fright for the race leader, Rik Verbrugghe, but he keeps his overall lead, and indeed, the win today by Danilo Hondo will make no difference. The overall situation will remain the same. So I hope you've enjoyed our coverage of today's stage of the Tour of Italy. Remember, be with us every day at 9:30 Eastern Time, and we'll be there too, and we'll continue with the Giro d'Italia. For Paul Sherwin, Bob Roll, I'm